Okay, 6 o'clock. I'd like to call the Monday, November 22nd, 2021 Grafton School District Board of Education meeting to order. Ask everyone present to please rise for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as we begin our work tonight, I just want to state for the record that we begin our work with a heavy heart in regards to the unfortunate and tragic events that unfolded in Waukesha yesterday. And certainly our thoughts and prayers are with the community, most importantly the children and the school district, and all those who have a role in guiding those young adults who have suffered in many ways, and we wish them well, and our thoughts and prayers continue to remain with them at this difficult time. Let's move on to the consent agenda. We've got two items on the consent agenda item this evening: the approval of the October 25th, 2021 board meeting minutes and the statement of receipts and expenditures for October. A motion to approve those items.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed, and it passes. Jeff, Superintendent's report.
Yes, we have a few items here. So we are pleased to announce that for the third consecutive time, the Grafton School District has been recognized with the highest possible rating of significantly exceeds expectations on the Wisconsin DPI report card. So to celebrate and thank our staff, tomorrow morning we will be providing platters of fruit along with donuts and muffins at each of our buildings from Sendix. That'll be a great way for our staff to start the final day as we head into Thanksgiving, but to thank them for all the work. But congratulations to all of our students and staff and our community on that accomplishment. And then school board spring election is coming up on April 5th, so there are some important dates coming up. For anyone interested in filing for candidacy, it's Tuesday, January 4th at 5 p.m. is the final time, and then the non-candidacy deadline is Friday, December 24th at 5 p.m. On our district webpage, we do have a school board page, and if you click on that, there's a board election tab, and it shows our two incumbents, who are Ms. Mail and Mr. Kaler, and then another area for candidate profiles for anyone that turns in papers to run. So it just goes directly right on there. Then if anyone has questions about running for a seat, we're referring them either to Mr. Lorgy as board president or myself with any questions that they would have. And then we have some final accomplishments for our Grafton High School athletes that I've asked Mr. Moore to come up and recognize.
Good evening. Well, it was another successful sports season at GHS. It's hard to believe, but the winter sports season is already here. We're playing basketball. The boys are swimming in the pool. There's hockey started, so that means that fall has concluded. Just some highlights from this past fall. The football team finished with a 7-3 overall record, qualifying for the playoffs for the fourth consecutive year. The following players received all conference honors. First team, Vince Cameronese, Chase Norton, Jaden Teagues, Nathan Skiba, Josh Lee O'Brien, Preston Bonk, Jackson Heinley, Brock Jasinski, Ben Birch, Dylan Newman, Daniel Fandler, and Silvio Lanza. Honorable mention included Carson Faust, Ben Dauberfall, Brock Jasinski, Aaron Chesow, Sylvia Lanza, and Matthew Scherger. In addition, Chase Norton was named the Conference Offensive Player of the Year. And Nathan Skiba was named Conference Lineman of the Year. Dean Snyder had special recognition as the Grafton representative of the Woodland Conference Scholar Athlete Award. The football recognition continued into the all-region honors with Josh Lee O'Brien, Chase Norton, Silvio Lanza, Nathan Skiba, and Ben Birch all garnering those honors. And Silvio Lanza earned honorable mention all-state honors as a punter. So congratulations to those gentlemen. On the girls' volleyball side, Abby Prayfrock was named first team all-conference. Leah Majeski was named honorable mention all-conference this season. The girls' swim and dive team placed 16th overall at the WIA state competition. Individual state qualifiers were Hallie Grimm, Iris Jamel, Libby Michael, Lola Michael, and Miranda Utke in the dive. Medal winners at the state meet were Miranda Utke, third place in dive, and Libby Michael, sixth place in the 500 free. And on the boys' soccer side, Colton Mikolajic and Charlie Rose were named to the second team all-conference this season, and Noah Pegalo was named honorable mention all-conference. So overall, a lot of our student athletes recognized at the all-conference level as well as all-region and even all-state recognition this fall.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
Then I have an update from Michelle Bigler from the Grafton Educational Foundation, where she said many exciting initiatives, some old and some new, are happening with the Grafton Education Foundation. Our annual Seeds to Harvest campaign is ongoing and is raising money through online donations. Members of the Grafton Educational Foundation will march in the Grafton Holiday Parade, and I'll make a comment about that in just a minute, again this year. And our student ambassadors will run a hot apple cider stand during the parade. The stand will be located near Grafton Orthodontist. Please stop by and enjoy a cup of cider. Get your holiday shopping done at Rylu Boutique in Cedarburg on Wednesday, December 1st from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Rylu will be donating 20% of all purchases, including gift cards, to GEF on Wednesday, December 1st. And finally, save the date. Our annual Night of Giving will be Friday, May 13th, 2022. I think location is still to be determined, but they are planning on their Night of Giving on Friday, May 13th. And then my final comment would go along with what Mr. Lorgy said about Waukesha. I'd reached out to their leadership team today in the school district. They did not have school today. They're not having school tomorrow either, heading into Thanksgiving. They had some counseling opportunities for students and some different things for families that they're setting up. So we want to keep them in our thoughts and prayers. And here in Grafton, we have our 41st annual Grafton Christmas Parade was scheduled for this Saturday. So I'd spoken with Pam King this morning because, as you know, we have a large number of our students and staff that walk in the parade, that volunteer at the parade. She had already met with the Grafton PD and DPW, and they are working on a plan in which all the streets in the parade route are either able to be blocked with barriers or police cars or DPW trucks, and they're to ensure safety for all participants. They're meeting again tomorrow to make a final decision as to whether or not to have the parade go forward or not. As I said to her, we will support whatever direction the chamber moves in. If they have the parade, we will alert our families and students about that. That'll be their decision to march in that or be involved in it, but we will support whatever they do with that decision. But we want to keep the school district of Waukesha and all their families that have been impacted by that tragedy in our thoughts and prayers. So we definitely are getting through some challenging times together, but as we head into a holiday weekend, hopefully an opportunity to get some rest and enjoy time with family and friends during a Thanksgiving time. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? All right, then we'll move on to public comment. For the record, I did receive public comment from 15 people, about 21 emails, mostly, if not all, related to COVID matters. I have either of those emails were sent directly to the board or I've forwarded them to the board so everybody has them. Any people wishing to speak at public comment this evening? All right, same drill as in the past. Keep your time limited to 3 minutes. State your name and your address or affiliation to the school district, and repetitive testimony and repetitive comments aren't necessary. If you hear something that you agree with, then certainly indicate that you agree with it. Otherwise, we'll continue to move on forward with our agenda. So, Mr. Nash.
This never gets easier. Dan Nash, 1620 North Pine Street, Grafton. President of the Grafton Music and Theater Boosters Program. First of all, congratulations to all you. We go ahead and we celebrate this 9th best school district in the state. That is a great accomplishment. We should all be proud, but every single one of you should be proud of the product that you're turning out here. I don't like to talk about people as product, but that's what they are, right? They have become healthy, sane, and good productive adults after they move on through here, and it has everything to do with you and the community that supports you, so thank you for that. And also thank you to our student athletes. Fantastic, huh? It shows what perseverance and hard work can go out and do and can get you what you need. Chili Day, we had it this Saturday. Great success. Thank you for all of you that participated and purchased it. Look forward to the march and seeing you all there, and we'll do it again. Spirit Week, where I was told I need to go ahead and talk about this. For anybody that is in how we have Spirit Weeks at the high school and all that good stuff, and all little teams and everybody gets to wear their shirts, we're now offering them up for Grafton High School Performing Arts. So it's on our website. You can go ahead and check that out. And now for the upcoming events. As Jeff mentioned, the holiday parade, please come out and support our students. They need that more than everything right now. Spoke with a lot of them today, not doing so well, but we're working with them, and if it happens on Saturday, they'll be there for sure, supporting and showing their spirit. So it's a really important time to back them. 12/7, Kennedy Elementary, Woodview Elementary, and John Long Middle School holiday concert, 6 to 8 o'clock. Please show up, bring some extra cash, donate to the 50/50. Those prizes can get huge, so it's a good concert, brings Christmas cheer. December 10th, 11th, and 12th. You're all going to want to be there for a great adventure. Our own J.D. Atkins has his original play again called Adventure, and what I am told, it'll be an adventure you will never forget. A lot of space stuff and a lot of things that are going to be fantastic. 12/16, Winter Band Concert right here in the auditorium, and also 12/20, the Winter Choir Concert. I said when I became president of this group, my only goal was to fill that auditorium. It is only to support those kids. So if there's anything we can do as a community, take one night out of the week, jam that thing close like we do on 12/11 for the Ozaukee County Chorus, that would be fantastic. So that is 12/16 and 12/20. Our next meeting is next Monday, 12/1 in the back of the auditorium. And then just one little plug if nobody has heard, Graftonics is qualified again for quarterfinals, which will be February 5th somewhere in Illinois. We're not quite sure yet on the date and their time, so we look forward to bringing that to you. So thank you for your time, and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
I'm Carrie McClung. I live at 1816 Riverbend Road in Grafton. I'm concerned about the ongoing increased level of COVID cases in the district. I don't understand why the district is proposing to reduce mitigation strategies. Last week, there were 33 positive cases in the district. That count comes from the emails that come out daily from you. The district's own data shows a steep increase in COVID cases over last year. The two differences between last year and this year are that masking and quarantine of close contacts are not required until COVID spread is already active and increasing. It's clear from your own data, the report of cases that are emailed out each day, that masking and close contact quarantining were making a difference last year. The changes Superintendent Nelson is proposing include shifting to virtual instruction only when a grade level reaches 15%. And unless I'm misunderstanding, that means that a single classroom could be at a 30% case rate, but still remain in person if the case rate for the rest of the grade was low. I'm speaking particularly at the elementary level. How is this safe? How is this mitigating the spread of the virus? To me, this is a poor attempt at trying to reduce the amount of time a student spends in virtual instruction. The district could proactively reduce students going virtual by enforcing masking and requiring close contacts to quarantine, rather than being reactive. Not only is it illogical to reduce mitigation in the district when COVID activity is high, it jeopardizes our youngest students' ability to get vaccinated. I know for a fact that there's already families who've had to postpone vaccination for their younger students because their kids got sick. So this board pointed to vaccination as a significant mitigation factor once it was available for ages 5 to 11. So how can it be a mitigating factor if children can't even get vaccinated because they're getting sick with COVID? You can't get a vaccine when you have COVID. You have to be completely over it. It makes zero sense. The vaccines have also only been available for about 3 weeks. That's not enough time for most kids to maybe even get a single vaccine, like a single dose, because it was difficult to get in, or certainly not a second dose, and the additional 2 weeks to reach the full immunity. So the other thing I want to address is, why are close contacts not required to quarantine? The entire purpose of a close contact being notified and quarantined is to basically stop the spread, like, of an asymptomatic person from spreading the virus. So if close contacts aren't required to quarantine, what's the point? Why are you even bothering? It's a complete waste of effort to even track those if you're not going to make people quarantine. Worse, it actually penalizes asymptomatic students who do the right thing and quarantine, because those students miss a significant portion of in-class learning time. We had this situation go on just this past week on Friday with my daughter, who's in 7th grade. You know, it was a, do you go? Do you stay home? Do you go? And ultimately, I gave her the choice, and she chose to stay home. So, you know, she's doing virtual learning now. Thankfully, she had the links right away. That wasn't the case when my elementary student was virtual. It took at least a day or more. So anyway, this practice encourages students who are close contacts to not quarantine. A student who is a close contact can basically attend school without wearing a mask and potentially be spreading the virus around, which to me is absurd and is basically a meaningless attempt at quarantining. So I'm asking you to not reduce mitigation strategies now. COVID spread is way too high in the district to even be thinking about that. At least allow our youngest students to become fully vaccinated before it's considered. Instead, you could require masks while COVID activity is high, which is still recommended by your local and your federal health agencies, and you could make close contact quarantines required unless, regardless of what percentage a building or a district or a grade is at.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Halula. I live at 1060 6th Avenue. Thank you for taking the time to hear me speak today. I'm urging you to hold off on relaxing the mitigation plan. District data supports the continuation of the current mitigation plan, given this past week was one of the highest, if not our actual highest week of the entire year for positive cases. Based on our data, we see a spike in positive cases, after which we tighten mitigation, cases go down, we relax mitigation, cases go up, we tighten mitigation, cases go down, and so on and so forth. If mitigation didn't work, then increased mitigation would have no effect on case numbers, and that's just simply not the case. If the school board's goal is to make decisions based on data and science, then the board will make the decision to hold off on relaxing mitigation strategies, minimally until the current spike in cases declines, and ideally until all children have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated. The yo-yoing in the mitigation levels has had an adverse impact on the volume and quality of instructional time. More classes have had to go virtual this year than last year, and we are less than 3 months into the school year. Currently, I have one vaxxed middle schooler quarantining and another elementary schooler not yet fully vaxxed who has had 2 positives in his classroom. When I asked my middle schooler, when I told my middle schooler that he was a close contact, he immediately left the after-school club he was in, went outside, and told me that he has friends who are unvaxxed, and their families probably are too, and he didn't want to get anyone sick, hospitalized, or have to miss Thanksgiving with their families because of him potentially being asymptomatic. Even though my son hates and struggles in the virtual school format, he prioritized the health and safety of his unvaxxed friends and their families over his own comfort and convenience. While I couldn't be more proud of his compassionate selflessness, my son lost 1 whole day of instruction and a few other classes due to tech issues, as well as having viewing-only access. My other son has asthma and isn't yet fully vaccinated. As I think back to when my son was taken via ambulance from a Grafton clinic to Children's Hospital while totally lethargic due to asthma and no viral complications, I'm very concerned about his health and safety if the board chooses to relax mitigation amidst currently rising COVID numbers. As a concerned mother, I'm imploring you to keep mitigation as is, again, minimally until the current spike goes down, or ideally through late December, so that all students have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated and protected if we're going to be increasing risk via less mitigation. I really believe that another 3 to 4 weeks of the current plan isn't going to unduly harm anyone. In fact, it might be what keeps more of our kids healthy and our extended family members safer, our holiday gatherings more viable, more classrooms being able to stay in person, and therefore greater continuity of instructional time. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everybody. I am Ashley Nowak. I'm at 1977 Shasta Ave in Grafton. I just wanted to start out by thanking you all for the data collection that you guys have done over the last couple of months. That is an absolute thankless job, and we just really appreciate it because we know that data is what drives all of this. That being said, the current plan, I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening for my son. I'd really like you guys to double check what day 0 is, I guess. There's been a couple of situations where students have been in quarantine because a family member has it and then testing negative at home for a long period of time and then going positive, so they were never actually a close contact to any students at school. And are they part of those mitigation factors? And if so, that leads to these false highs. That being said, my son is currently in 2nd grade. His class has 0 cases right now, but he's in that 6% group. And for him, the current plan states that he would need to quarantine if he became a close contact at this point. In the plan, there's no room for that parent discretion, which is unfortunately because he's already had COVID, so he's immune at this point and would not pose a risk to those other students. So the plan that you guys have proposed for tonight, I'm really thankful for the changes that you're making, so I just wanted to express my support for that. So once again, thank you guys.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Lubner, and I live at 135 Aquaview Drive in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, in the town of Grafton. I sent you guys a long email explaining the experience that happened in the 2nd grade at Kennedy this past week. I think the number one thing I ask for you to consider tonight is to empower our administrators to be able to apply the current program based upon exposure and not based upon testing dates. I even believe that the current, I've always believed that the current plan has mitigation timelines that far exceed 14 days, which is what we've utilized since the inception of the pandemic. It's simply a mathematical equation in the elementary level. And when it's being applied based on testing date, the mitigation is extending and extending and extending. The cohort of students that remain in class right now have not been exposed after, I guess, past the date that those kids were no longer in school. And so therefore, once that cohort, if that cohort is not going positive during that duration of time, once you get to that 14 days, they've exhausted the recommended mitigation timeline. So I just ask that you look at empowering those that are administering the program to be able to work off of the actual exposure date. They've done an exceptional job when it comes to close contact tracing, better than many districts. They're taking the time, they're asking the questions, and you know, that was seen even this past week because we received a mitigation letter saying mitigation began on the 16th. However, a close contact letter came out saying the exposure was on the 12th. I don't understand why the 14 would start on the 16th when the exposure was the 12th. So I really ask you to think about that, dive into it, and again, empower them to administer the plan accordingly. When it comes to the 5 days that's recommended this evening as calendar days, I get behind that as well. Utilizing school days, again, excessively extends mitigation. Think about it, if a child is able to come back to school, let's say Wednesday of this week, the 5 school days applies a 12-day calendar mitigation versus 5 calendar days would be 5 days. And again, that's 5 days beyond the 10-day quarantine that was already exhausted for an elementary student. So at a 4% level, with the recommendations this evening, they're still being mitigated at the 4% level for 15 days in the elementary classroom. When it comes to the 6% level, based on what's unfolded in most of our classrooms this year, the second child, which pushes us into that level, happens 1 to 3 days after, maybe 4. We're seeing more cases than last year. We're dealing with a different environment. But that second case still has to go 10 days forward, plus 5 calendar days. The first case will come back and still produce a mitigation of about 10 to 12 days at a minimum. If you think about your close contact quarantine when required, you're requiring a close contact to mitigate for 10 days. After that mitigation period, they are allowed to come back to school. If you're allowing a known close contact to come back in 10 days, why are we mitigating a classroom that has students that may not have even been a close contact for more than 14 days? That is what I really don't understand. So please talk about it. Please consider making a motion to amend and empower them to be able to utilize that day of exposure. Thank you.
Catherine Schmidt, 1668 Arapahoe Avenue in Grafton. I really didn't want to have to come to another one of these meetings. Emotionally, it's just exhausting. I have enough worrying about every time my kid has the sniffles. I have to get her tested again to see if it's safe for her to be around any of our family. But I'm here for all the parents that wanted to come tonight, but they can't because their kids are sick at home with COVID right now, who don't even have the chance to get the shot. There are people who are not going to be able to spend time with their family over this holiday season. My daughter wasn't able to have a birthday party last year because of COVID. We planned a COVID-safe party this year, which had to be canceled because 2 of the guests are students at Kennedy and both got COVID from families who actually mask and do what they can. But as we all know, masks work when everyone wears them, including the sick people. I'm not sure why the administration chooses to take the advice of a real estate agent over the local health department, the state health department, and the CDC for how we should be handling this. It's obvious it's not going away. But instead of taking better precautions, we're saying, you know what? It's actually showing how bad of a job we're doing because now all these kids are having to go virtual. So let's change it to make it look better. Today, half of my daughter's class was out. Half. How is this good for anybody? When one grade in one classroom over the weekend, you have 6 cases that are positive, 6 children that all happen to sit next to each other, that all have COVID. And yet the school treats it like that's a random thing, which is just ridiculous to think anyone's going to believe that. There were 13 new cases today. Last year showed after Thanksgiving, numbers went even higher. So what do? We say, hey, let's step back. Let's do even less. False positives or false numbers showing that it's higher than it actually is ridiculous because we all know parents aren't testing kids, which is why this is happening, because they don't want to have them miss school. Close contacts who have the possibility, because they're sitting for 8 hours a day next to another kid, and the parent doesn't want to go through the annoyance of having a positive case, continues to send their kids, and it continues to spread. The school district's plan is to wait till things get really bad and then do something. So is that how we should teach our kids? Is that what sex ed is here? Hey, after you're pregnant, you should probably start using a condom. Because this is what it feels like. Wait till the damage is done and then try to take it back. Or change whatever the goalposts you have to make it not look like it's failing, because it is. There are districts of similar size that have a total number of cases this year, what we might have in one day. This is not good. I know it's not convenient. Nobody likes it. But it's how we deal with it that shows how good of a district we really are. And I think right now we're failing at that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Sarah Cooper, 2140 Shoshone Street. First of all, thank you all for everything you've been doing. I am very glad of everything and very supportive of whatever the decisions do come out of anything. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to be a teacher in first grade. I came 2 months ago and did start talking about the really big kindergarten classes coming up. And what I noticed was kindergarten has an aide. They also have special ed aides who are in that class. In first grade, it was just me. Our first grade teachers are phenomenal, but when you're next year having 28 kids in this class, I found it really hard to step out and talk to a student without worrying that kids were gonna be dancing when I come back in. When I had a co-teacher with me to help assist, we did great. The 2 of us really worked well. We could take care of some of the issues that were happening without worrying about what was happening in the class. And we are at an age of 6 and 7-year-olds that they are gonna act up when you walk away. My kids do when I leave the room, so I do expect it there. I also noticed that I don't see the difference between 5 and 6-year-olds and then moving them to 6 and 7. I actually asked the kids why they were doing it, and they kept saying, we don't have enough playtime. And I realized they do have a really vigorous curriculum for first grade. And what really stunned me as a parent was when I was watching the other 2 teachers take over my recess duty. And it hit me, they are doing recess duty. Our teachers who should be getting a break, and especially this year taking some time and working together, we're going out to watch my kid at recess. And it made me wonder, what can I do to keep helping? One thing I know 2 years ago is we had parents who helped do recess duty. And that's something, if we can bring back, would be great. I'd be more than happy to volunteer my time so my teachers didn't have to do that. And especially if maybe we have one person, I know staffing is hard, who can help in those classrooms, who can give extra aid, because the class coming up may have some friends who need more help. And how are they going to get the help they need, as well as the ones who need all the help to strive to do better, who are at the top of their game? Our teachers are doing phenomenal, but they could always use more assistance. And after being there, I realized we need to help them so we can keep making our kids be better readers, writers, and just general people. Also, I want to really thank you for what you've done with the ALICE program. I don't know how I would have talked to my 5-year-old and 6-year-old about a dangerous person in the building. They didn't come home scared. They were telling me, I'm prepared, I can do this. I know where to go, I will throw a shoe. And it's something, I won't lie, I was terrified of sending my kids to school, of that dreaded moment you find out they won't come back. And luckily, hopefully it'll never happen, but this program really makes me feel like we will succeed. And I know that those teachers, they're gonna protect my kids no matter what. But the kids can also help. So thank you so much for giving us that information and implementing that into our schools. Thank you.
Any additional comments this evening? Seeing none, thank you all very much for your input. It's appreciated and necessary as we continue to move forward with our planning and activities for the school year. Item C, committee reports. We had a finance committee meeting on November 15th. Mark, any?
Yes, so finance met last Monday. We had 2 agenda items, one of which is on the agenda this evening, which was looking at some debt refinancing options. I'm happy to tell you that there's a recommendation from the finance committee to restructure our debt. And Topher will get into more details, but essentially the way we're going to do it will allow the referendum debt to be paid off 4 years early, but yet also reduce the tax levy impact on our taxpayers by 20 million-ish, because we're going to have a meeting up in December for that refinancing. So more to come, but yes, very good thing coming out of finance. And the second item was an update on the Enhancing Our Future, Phase 2, and the timing around that phase.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark and the Finance Committee? We also had the Curriculum Committee meet on the 15th as well. Carrie.
Yes, curriculum met last Monday. We had 5 agenda items, 2 of which are on the agenda tonight, which are school report card update, which came out, the state report cards, along with the new Grafton High School course offerings for the year. And we'll get an update tonight on those. It's no new offerings, but changes in titles and content and prerequisites. We also went through the curriculum cycle update, which is, we always go through which courses are being researched as licenses may be up or when new textbooks may be needed. We did elementary reading update, which pairs with the professional development update, K through 8, what the students are doing, and professional development to support increased writing and reading.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions for Carrie and the Curriculum Committee? All right, let's move on to item D, the personnel report.
Yes, we have one item for approval for the board and one that's informational. We have asked for approval for Ann Menzel, special education teacher at Woodview Elementary School. This is an add. We have some added special education needs at the lower elementary school, so this is an addition to our current staffing model. And then the new informational hire for the kindergarten aide at Kennedy Elementary School of Christopher Caskey Doherty for that position.
Okay, then I'd entertain a motion to approve Ann Menzel is a special education teacher at Woodview Elementary School as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed? And it passes. Item E, Jeff, the 2021-22 school year plan update.
Yep, Ms. Stout's coming up to walk through some of our recommendations, some of the data that we have for the last month and even the last couple months. And we'll go through the various pieces that we still continue to utilize: health and safety, the quality instruction, efficient and safe operations, flexibility and responsiveness. So we reviewed some of our data. This is the piece that has come out this past Friday. I'll turn it over to Laura to walk through some of these slides.
Okay, so this is the snapshot of the activity in Ozaki and Washington County. And as you can see, the trajectory, at least for Ozaki County, is going down. But this is, the slide shows our daily percentage of positive cases in our district by building. And in the past week, we had quite an uptick in the number of positive cases, most notably at Kennedy. However, we're not seeing high amounts of classroom spread. So within the last 22 positive cases at Kennedy, only 3 students identified as a close contact actually became positive. And those 3 students were in 3 different classrooms. So we're not seeing concentrated classrooms of spread. Same thing at Woodview. In the last 14 positive cases, only 2 students identified as close contacts became positive. At the middle and the high school, they had 7 and 8 cases respectively, and none of those close contacts became positive. So this is the district dashboard as of noon today. District-wide, we have 44 positive cases, with about half of them coming from Kennedy. But based on the current positive students' return to school dates, when we come back on Monday next week, Kennedy will be down to only 2 positive cases. At the high school, we'll have 1. At the middle school, we'll have 1. And then at Woodview, we'll have 5, for a total of 9 positive cases next Monday, as the way things stand right now. We know we'll probably get some positives between now and then, but right now, that number is going to go from 44 down to 9. And in this chart, we added on the month of November. So it shows positive cases by month by building. So as you can see, high school started out really high and then dropped off the last 2 months. Middle school started low, spiked in October, now it's come back down. Kennedy started low in September, October, and this is where we're seeing the spike now in November. And Woodview started low in September, spiked in October, and they're slowly trending back down a little bit in November. So at our last board meeting, we said that we would track data about our virtual classrooms, and since then we have found that out of the 6 classrooms and the 1 grade level that switched to virtual learning, 5 of them returned to in-person learning at 0% positivity, and 2 classrooms came back at 4%. The positivity rate dropped below 15% between 1 and 7 days after shifting to virtual instruction. So we're feeling that the 14 days of virtual instruction might be unnecessarily long, especially at the classroom level, which can be so volatile with just so few students. So beginning November 7th, students or children ages 5 to 11 could begin receiving the COVID vaccination. So in addition to private healthcare providers, Oasis Healthcare and Concordia University are also some locations that families can get their children vaccinated. And then, since we met last time, we have implemented our K-12 testing program. It is free. It began on November 9th, and it's being run by Accelerated Clinical Labs, and they're running it from 8 in the morning until 3:45. Over the first 7 days of testing, we had 107 students, 7 staff, and 67 family members tested. And even though we're not going to have school on Wednesday, the testing will still be available on November 24th from 8 until 3:45, but they'll be closed on Thanksgiving and then the Friday after. So with the data that we've collected around our virtual instruction, plus the availability of both testing and vaccination, we're proposing some changes. And the first would be at the 15% positivity rate, which has been where we have moved to virtual learning. And we are suggesting that at the grade level only, that instruction becomes virtual until we have 5 consecutive calendar days at a positivity rate below 15%, then move back to in-person learning. And at the classroom level, students would remain in school and follow the mitigation strategies at the 6% threshold, which includes cohorting, masking, eating lunch in the classrooms. But families would have the option of utilizing the virtual learning until there are 5 consecutive calendar days of a positivity rate below 15%. So in some classes, only 3 positive students shifts that entire class into virtual learning. And in 2 situations, we had classes that shifted to virtual instruction for only 1 or 2 days before they dropped down to that 15%. So that percentage is very volatile. And that's why we're asking to just stay in school, masked, and at those 6%, that 6% threshold level of mitigation factors. And then we move to the 6% rate. We are asking for 2 changes. The first is optional close contact quarantine. Parents would still be notified if their child was a close contact within 6 feet. And then we're also saying that 6% factors would remain in place until that percentage drops below 6% for 5 consecutive days instead of the 14 days. Again, we're feeling like 14 days is just way too long. It doesn't need to be in place. We're seeing those percentages drop more rapidly. And then at the 4% level, similarly, optional close contact quarantining. Again, parents will be notified if their child was a close contact. The 4% mitigation factors would remain in place, again, for 5 consecutive days instead of 14. And up until this point, we have sent letters to families when we're shifting these, between these different levels. So we're just saying that letters to families would no longer be sent when a class or a grade would shift to the 4% level. It's not significantly impacting students like it would at the 6% level where they would need to actually come to school with a mask. But staff would still be notified of when this change would happen. So any questions?
That's the end of our update.
Yes, that is the end of the update, correct. I'm sorry, we don't have a slide for questions. My apologies.
So similar to the past, I think spend some time with clarifying questions if you have any. And then we can get on to a discussion amongst ourselves about these recommendations and thoughts that we might have relative to them. So any questions from to administration regarding the proposed changes?
Laura, you mentioned that close contact. My question is, for all the people who were named as close contacts, were they all tested? Or was that testing optional?
Testing's always optional.
Okay, so then when you...
And we don't know everybody who has been or who has not been tested.
So when you say only 2 people came
So
positive from a close contact, you're just the people who chose to be tested? So that to me...
So our tracing sheet, so we have a positive student. We list all of the students that were close contacts. So then I looked back like the last 2 weeks. So of those close contacts, did any of them become positive?
Yes.
That's what we mean by close contacts becoming positive. So out of those 22 positive students the last 22 positive students at Kennedy, only 3 close contacts out of all of those became positive.
But not all were tested? Or am I just getting this confused? So did they all...
They didn't become sick and they didn't get tested.
They did not?
Well, they may have. I mean, if they're positive, then we're going to know about that.
People who chose to get tested, so we wouldn't know if the other people... Is that right? Am I explaining this right?
So your question is if you're concerned that someone was asymptomatic and didn't get tested? Because obviously if they were symptomatic,
Right.
They wouldn't come to school.
they wouldn't come to school.
That's correct. We wouldn't know if someone was
So if someone's
asymptomatic.
close contact, they have the option to wear a mask or not. So asymptomatic, you come to school without a mask, so you could be transmitting it that way. Right, with the way our...
And we have had some students that were close contacts, were asymptomatic, were tested, and have been positive.
Could you repeat those numbers again regarding close contact? You said of the last 22 at Kennedy, 3 came from close contact.
Yes. And then at Woodview, out of the last 14 positive cases, 2 students identified as close contacts became positive. At John Long, we had 7 positive cases with no positive close contacts, and at the high school, 8 cases. And this is just going back the last 2 weeks.
Have have you analyzed the data prior to the previous 2 weeks?
I have, I don't have those numbers with me. I mean, like, for the whole school year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to gauge, is it, from the best of your recollection, is this number of positive cases coming from close contact
It's been
roughly the
similar.
same throughout the
Yeah.
year?
I just looked at the last 2 weeks because of the huge spike
Right.
that we've had in the last few weeks, thinking that maybe more of this was spread within classroom, but that's just really not what we're seeing.
Okay.
And like I said, the 3 positives that did come out of Kennedy as close contacts, they were in 3 separate classrooms. They weren't all bunched up in the same room.
Okay. The in the 6% COVID positivity rate, the proposed change is optional close contact quarantine. Why moving that to optional? I mean, I heard a reasonable argument tonight that if somebody is previously infected, that would be a reasonable reason for that. Is there other thinking behind that? Why are we moving that to optional, or proposing that be optional?
Besides the lack of classroom spread, last year we found that when they were masked, we weren't seeing the spread. We weren't, when we looked at that 2-week window, we weren't finding close contacts becoming positive. So if we implement that again this year, in theory, that would stop the spread.
Because it's 6%, everyone would be masked.
Everyone would be masked, correct.
And at 4%, it's optional, correct, for the students?
It's just the staff.
Well, masking would be mandatory at 6%.
I know, but it's always optional, regardless of the percent. You can always wear the mask.
Oh, yes, correct.
And so, as long as we're on the 6% category, moving from required to optional quarantining, is that also the one-way
Yes.
virtual, right? So you're moving from, the required is not one-way, correct? Or is it? Required, when you are required to quarantine,
Required is, yeah, they'd both be one way.
they both are one-way?
Yep.
Okay, so no change in that school setting, so to speak, in terms of how the education is being presented?
Right.
If the whole classroom becomes virtual, then it's a two-way.
Then it's a two-way.
Or for our students who have chosen virtual for the whole school year.
Just back to that those numbers of close contact turning positive. Any of those occurring after a 6% mitigation?
I would have to go back and look.
Okay. Other questions?
Laura, what do we use as the day 0 for, is it the positive test?
Positive?
Yeah, can you, I know you sent the email.
So day 0 would be the day of symptom onset, or if they were asymptomatic, would be the test date. That would be day 0.
We had the discussion today, though, that that's for the student.
Yes.
We have been for the class using when the mitigation measure takes effect. So the student, we go from that exposure piece, correct? But when we've been using the class piece, we've been using from the date that we start that mitigation.
So when a student becomes positive and they're on the dashboard,
Yep.
at noon that next day, or at noon on any day, that's when we have that percentage. And that gives us time then for the rest of the day to notify families and staff that we're switching levels. So it is kind of when we are notified of.
We don't go back because it could be 3 days, it could be 5 days, it could have been, you know, last Thursday and it's Monday and it's on that Tuesday because of when they maybe got tested or when they had symptoms and they waited till Saturday, they alert us on Monday. So we don't go back for the classroom at this point. We really just go back for that student. Because that student's positive case results in them being out for 10 days from the onset of symptoms. So the idea being that by moving from 14 days to 5 days of school days, we are still mitigating the chance of spread without trying to figure out a lot of the symptom piece and how that impacts the classroom level.
Right, and equally administratively, being able to track by student exposure dates, date of last contact. I mean, our systems are not prepared to do that right now. I mean, it's you're either here, or you're not. You're positive. You're not here, and you're a positive case, right?
Correct.
Or you're not here, and
you
have some other illness. I mean, you'd be talking about looking at every instance under this scenario based upon date of last contact.
Correct, and we have, you know, there's, parents share various data points that we don't have in our data, and all of our data is exactly from Skyward that pulls directly into the spreadsheet. And so if we were to try and start using different data points or to say, well, that one didn't really count, I think we would have even a different feeling of a lack of transparency or a feeling that we're trying to fudge the numbers one way or the other depending on your feelings on how we're doing with this problem. So that also creates an issue, I think, administratively with building trust.
And I'm less concerned about the trust factor and the transparency factor. I mean, there's a point upon which gathering all that data is just, it's really difficult. But I think the 5 calendar day provision, as you articulated, Laura, covers, I mean, we may end up in some cases longer than we'd otherwise need to be, but almost in every case it would be shorter than it currently is now. And in those cases where we have exposure dates that were before, or exposure date or data loss contact before that positive test date that's now triggering our number, we're going to appropriately shorten the mitigation measure. It's not an inappropriate shortening of that mitigation measure or shortening it just to shorten it. We're shortening it to match the risk associated with the data that we have and the positive case that we know of. I believe. I believe shortening that date also is supported by a shorter incubation period of Delta, the Delta variant.
Well, and it's supported by the data that we have from the classes that we've dealt with that have gone over 15% as well. So we've taken that. We knew going in at the end of at our meeting last month, we knew we had some classes. So what does that data say, whether it's a class or at the grade level, and it supports that, reducing it as well.
Any other questions, thoughts, or comments? I still struggle with the optional close contact at that 6% level. But I recognize, you know, the thinking that went into that. At the end of the day, those kids are wearing masks, right? That our own data suggests from previous years that during that period of time, we're effectively mitigating the spread. So, you know, while I struggle with it, I think there's sound rationale for making it optional. The other was, you know, somebody who had previously been infected now has that option available to them as well.
And there are states, Indiana being one of them, that if someone is masked and are a close contact, they do not need to quarantine. So in their school system, the state of Indiana, that's what the rule is in the state. And so there's even states who follow that guidance, that if you're masked, then you don't quarantine.
I believe that may have been the CDC recommendation for a short period of time as well, until they changed their recommendations. Additional comments?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty frustrated with, obviously, you know, my stance on this. I feel that I just don't think we should be rolling back mitigation measures. I feel that with the case, I see the cases going up. I mean, at one point you had Woodview, then it's spreading to Kennedy, where I thought we were questioning whether or not what was happening. It wasn't happening at Kennedy. Now we have all these cases at Kennedy, right? And now I feel that Woodview is getting more cases again, and now middle school and high school. So I feel that, you know, we're getting into the colder seasons, we're indoors more, and I'm worried that it's just going to keep spreading with all these optional, not optional, no masks, and especially for the younger kids who still aren't able to be fully vaccinated. I think that we'd be making a mistake to do that, and I think we should be actually having more mitigation measures. That's my opinion.
Any other thoughts?
Just a thought. I mean, I think, you know, we saw last year that we felt spread was not within the schools. And I think this year, with the relaxed requirements around, I think you're seeing a lot less precaution in general in the society. So we're an institution that's got some mitigation factors, but others don't. So I think it's...
I just feel that there's disruption in the kids' education with keep going back to virtual, back in person, mask optional, mask required. It just seems like it's just a lot of disruption with the kids' education by going back and forth. Where I know with some of the schools that are masked, I see you're just going to school, you have your masks on, and everyone's in school. There are schools like that are just don't have the disruption because you're not being sent home, you're masked, and it's really not that much of an issue.
Is there disruption by moving between mitigation measures?
I think the longer that students are out in virtual, that there's more disruption there. I mean, 14 days versus 5 days at a grade level, you know, they're back in person with a normal day again, much sooner. But going from 4% to 6%, there's no disruption. I mean, they're masked at 6%, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, they're cohorting. Maybe the only switch would be they're eating in their classroom instead of going to the cafeteria. So going from 4 to 6, that might be a change, but I don't know if that's significant.
I can see where extended virtual or virtual for reasons that aren't actually providing a mitigating effect is disruptive. And I think that was one of the things that we wanted to do, was to limit that as much as possible. By my calculation, we're at about 98.2% of our student days are in person since the beginning of the year. So while there has been some virtual, the 7 instances have resulted in, few virtual days. That's through last Friday. So I think from that perspective, our plan is functioning as intended, is to provide the opportunity for in-person instruction and to provide mitigating measures when we see the impacts of COVID coming in. I agree with Mark that generally as a community and as a society, and there's there's less risk aversion right now than there was a year ago. And I know I've said before here that, I mean, there was no illusion, at least from my perspective, and I think from the board's perspective, that there would be 0 cases, or there would even be fewer cases than last year. I mean, I don't know that that was ever thought to be the case or intended to be the case. It's logical that there would be more in light of the changing attitudes towards society. I still struggle, Joe, with the, and I've heard it a couple of times tonight in some of the comments, well, but we should have masks on until elementary kids are able to get vaccinated. But there will be a high population, it could be 40, 50, 60% that choose never to be vaccinated for the elementary. So would we just have masks then forever? Or until all get vaccinated? Till a reasonable population of them? And what is that reasonable population? That has been my sticking point with this thing all along, is that there's no off-ramp.
But at least the people who want to get vaccinated have that opportunity to protect themselves if that's what they choose.
And it's easy to say that today, but 4 months from now, wouldn't it be just as easy to say, well, look, only 50% of those that wanted to get vaccinated got vaccinated. We're still in the same boat that we were 3 months ago.
But then they'll be vaccinated, and the ones who choose not to, I mean, it's...
We'll be in the same boat.
Well, we would still have that person who feels bad that my friend is not, by choice maybe, my friend is not vaccinated, I could be spreading it to them.
Right.
But that could continue on for, because that person may never get vaccinated, or that, I mean, that child may or may not ever.
So what are you saying then?
Well, kind of what Paul said, like, do you just keep wearing masks? I understand not wanting to spread to someone who's unvaccinated, but that person, like, that may be forever. That person may never get vaccinated. So should we just wear masks until, because that person may never, some people may never get vaccinated.
So
honestly.
So my perspective is our plans and mitigation measures have to provide reasonable assurances, not absolute assurances, that there won't be positive cases. We can't provide absolute assurances. We have to provide reasonable assurances, and we have to, our objective all along was to maximize our in-person learning. And our plan as it was developed was a plan that was layered in mitigation, meaning when case counts or positive case rise, our mitigation levels rise. And in some cases now, we see a rising point in cases, and our mitigation levels are rising in regards to that. Now, are we taking mitigation measures away as a result of your proposal?
Well, the optional quarantine would be a piece that we've said, because you're going to be wearing a mask, and so it would be something that we would say that would be something that we would take away. Going virtual at 15% would be something that we are pulling back from, because we've said if you're wearing a mask and you're in the classroom, that's the best learning environment for students. So, I mean, you asked earlier, you know, is there a loss of learning? Are there different push-pulls? And I would say, you know, last year the push-pull was when you were close contacted all the time. Someone could be close contact quarantine, come back to school, a week later get close contacted again. They could never be sick, and they could have lost weeks of instruction because of being a close contact, just unfortunately. This year a similar thing can occur where a family member gets COVID, they can't isolate away from me, so I stay home. I come back and maybe I get COVID, or I become a close contact at school and I have to go home again, and it's a one-way communication. It isn't synchronous like it was last year. So that's been a concern that parents have brought forward of losing this instructional days in one way, or in one case where they had COVID themselves, and then like the day they returned, the day they're supposed to return, then the class went virtual. So they'd missed their own instructional time, then the class went virtual, so there's more instructional time that was lost. So there are instances like that where, because of the timing of various pieces, that students are missing that in-class learning, and that's where we've said we want to focus in on staying in person and using mitigation factors that worked in the past. If there's a spread, then bring those factors to the table for students and staff.
I have a question on the 4%. Because we changed it from, it used to be that you had to quarantine if you were not vaccinated and not wearing a mask. And now it's optional close contact at that point. And at 4%, they're still not required to wear masks. So I'm not sure, because I got, if you're already vaccinated, and we could even throw in like, or you've been COVID positive in the last whatever, you know, that you do not need to quarantine. But I'm not sure why at that rate we're saying that if you were a close contact at 4%, unvaccinated, unmasked, why you don't have to quarantine anymore. Because the classroom would likely still be unmasked. I mean, it's optional, but I guess that's the one I'm still confused on.
I guess we're not seeing the spread
Okay.
in the classroom, so I guess that would be the reason.
I'm with you on that. I didn't realize that that same provision was in the 4%.
Well, because it used to be it stated like, unless you were, and I understood because we do that for like at home, if you're able to isolate and you're already vaccinated, the child can, you know, like you can come back. If you've been exposed, but you're now able to isolate away from that person, which is similar, I would think, to a close contact at school, you know, they're gone now. And I got why if you're masked or vaccinated that you could come back. And then I get why if everyone in the classroom is wearing a mask at that point, you can, you know, you don't need to be quarantined. I guess I'm confused if the classroom still, you are exposed, you're still not wearing a mask, you're not vaccinated, so there is an increased chance that you might contract it. That's the one I'm confused on.
I guess playing off that, I get it from a rationality standpoint. If the goal is, like Paul, you said, you know, take reasonable measures to mitigate the spread of COVID or people getting COVID. But trying to figure out, is the goal to stop people from getting a positive test from COVID or getting sick from COVID? Because I feel like the data would say there's a huge difference between a positive test and getting sick. I mean, somebody who spoke last meeting talked about you wouldn't have known my child was sick, but they had a positive test. So what, I think it was something to the effect of to protect kids from getting a positive or from getting COVID. But is that the goal of all of this, is to protect kids from getting a positive test or from getting sick from COVID? Because all since the summer, we've heard about how this is different and the Delta variant's different, and we're supposed to look at the data, and we look at the data, but the data is always cases. And I'm looking at the Ozaukee, Washington County COVID dashboard. In the last 30 days, there's been 21 hospitalizations for COVID in the entire county. So that's the whole county, that's all ages. 21. I mean, even the Children's Hospital website, you have to dig around a little bit, but current hospitalization rate 0 to 17 in Wisconsin is 0.33. And it says right in there, though many of those kids were hospitalized for other reasons, although they were hospitalized and then they got a test that said they were positive. So, I mean, from a protection standpoint, putting aside whether it's whose job it is, say it's our job to protect the kids, is it to protect them from a positive test or from getting seriously ill from COVID? And it seems like all we talk about is tests. You know, cases have gone up. But okay, but what's happening to these kids? I mean, I think I've asked a few times if we can get somebody from the health department to come in, but again, in the last month, 21 people in the entire county have been hospitalized due to COVID. It's not even clear on the website if it's because of COVID or if it's like Children's Hospital at least puts in the disclaimer that says they may have been hospitalized for other reasons but then had a positive test. So even if all 21 of those were 0 to 17-year-olds, which there's no way that that's the case, that's just a minuscule percentage of kids. And it's not the case. I mean, it's 21 total cases, hospitalizations in the entire county in the last month. We sit here and talk about cases in the thousands of protecting kids. I mean, what are we protecting them from?
Yeah, and I
Is
think
it zero COVID, I guess, is that the goal? Going to the off-ramp comments, like when does it stop?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. Our goal is to provide and maximize the educational experience of all students in the district. That's our goal, right? And whether we like it or not, part of that under COVID is assessing whether or not we have some type of spread, regardless of, in my opinion, regardless of the severity of that spread of an individual case or all cases. It seems to me that we have a responsibility to do what we can, within reason, to limit that spread, not necessarily to limit positive cases or to limit disease or to limit the severity of that disease. I don't think it's unreasonable for our plans to, within reason, minimize the spread.
I'm not suggesting it is, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot necessarily. I know this is not a monarchy, but
It's a good point. I did say that was our goal. In fact, our goal is to maximize the educational opportunity.
yeah, I mean, we have factors in place, but I feel like, we get the emails that, that say these, really nice things about how the kids are completely unprotected, but just looking at the expert data or the Children's Hospital data and the Washington County Health Department data, what are we protecting them from if their own data doesn't really show that, kids are getting sick? There's just a difference between being sick with COVID and having a positive test. Not to say that we are doing things to help limit positive tests and COVID cases, but if this is what the results are right now and it's still not even close to enough, or we're all idiots and we don't care about the kids and all this, I mean, there's no reason to believe that the feelings are going to change once, in 3 weeks from now when all the, 5 to 12-year-olds can get vaccinated. I mean, I just have no belief that, at some point, if you're so dug in, you're never going to change your mind. And then I cease to believe that, I'll only speak for me, that I'm the one not looking at the data to assess risk. So part of risk assessment is not the assessment of what are the risks of one of my 3 daughters that all go to our schools having a piece of paper that says you have COVID versus them actually getting sick and being hospitalized with COVID or seriously ill with COVID. One doesn't seem to be happening at all based on the numbers, at least from Children's and at least from the health department.
I don't disagree with that logic. I will, though, say back to Carrie's point regarding optional quarantining close contact at the 4% mitigation level, that under all circumstances where we made a change, or where a change is being proposed tonight, when you think of layers of mitigation, under all cases where a change is being proposed tonight, there is a suspender after the belt. So we have the concept of belt and suspenders. How do you hold your pants up? Well, you get 2 options. You get a belt and suspenders. In some cases, we may be reducing our mitigation, but in all cases where we're reducing that mitigation, there is still yet another underlying mitigation technique in place, other than that 4% change that Carrie referenced. In that case, we are removing a mitigation technique without a suspender. We will have close contact individuals, known to be close contact individuals that aren't required to wear a mask even, right? Minimally, I think they would have to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Quarantining may be optional, but they would be required to wear a mask minimally, would be my thought.
You're just saying the close contact or the whole class?
The close contact.
Because that kind of doesn't make sense to me.
The close contact, well, because the close contact's the one I'm worried might develop COVID because they've been exposed. It would make,
So the mask isn't going to change if they've been exposed?
Oh, they may still develop COVID. Nothing, if you've already been exposed, nothing's going to stop you from developing it. Wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, if you're already exposed. But if they're wearing a mask, I'm trying to prevent them from spreading it to anyone else. And that was the whole point of having them at home quarantine. I don't want them to spread it to the other kids. If they happen to develop COVID, if they were exposed and happen to then go on to develop COVID, if they're wearing a mask, yes, they would. Yes, they will be out. But then you would know that at least the kid who did have COVID, who developed COVID, probably did not expose the classmates because was wearing a mask.
And again, if the primary goal is in-person learning,
Right.
changing that mitigation factor to, as opposed to what we're doing here, right now, at 4% in your close contact, you are required to quarantine, right? Now changing that, making that optional with the mask on would allow them to continue to maximize their educational experience by staying in school.
Do we have the ability to utilize the testing to offset, not having to wear the mask?
You do have to wait 3 to 5 days though, right? If you've been exposed and don't have symptoms.
Well, some schools do have, if you keep getting negative tests, then I would, no, you don't have to wear a mask. If you have proof that every day you don't have COVID, then no, don't wear a mask.
If you have symptoms, now you're a close contact. They say to wait 3 to 5 days to get the test for a more accurate result. So like, are they masking
Right away.
right away?
Because you don't know, is it 3 days, is it 4 days, is it, I mean,
Right.
no one knows.
And then it says 5 consecutive, not school days, that would be calendar days, right? That's the change.
Oh, they would have
That would
to,
be once it's below, or would they only do that for 5 calendar days?
if you were a close contact, I would expect you to do it the 7 calendar days. I would treat it just like the quarantine.
What are you looking at?
I'm looking at, the reason I'm concerned about the 4% was, right now, if you're unvaccinated and a close
No,
contact,
I get that part. Where did the 7 days come from?
I'm reading straight from the 4%, that what it used to be was, it was a required quarantine if you had been 3 feet, if you were not vaccinated and were not wearing a mask. So I'm saying, like when you said for 5 days, no, if you are a close contact and I ask you to only wear a mask for 5 days, you may not develop, I mean, day 6 may be the day you develop it. That's the whole reason we had you quarantine for 7 days. I mean, no, I would not feel comfortable saying only wear a mask for 5 days. I would say you wear a mask. We treat it just like we would treat it if you had been quarantined. You have to wear a mask, and this isn't instead of being quarantined.
7 calendar days with a negative test or 10 days without a test.
Mm-hmm. But for in-person learning, that's a whole lot better. I'd rather be in class wearing a mask than at home quarantine with one-way learning.
For sure.
So Carrie, what you're saying is the line that's crossed out where it says required close contact, unless wearing a mask, vaccinated, or already have had COVID.
Yeah, I'm fine with, or, adding in, especially if you've already had COVID, because.
Or vaccinated.
And then it's 7 calendar days with a negative test, but you would be in school and you're just wearing a mask instead of quarantining.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would be the same for the 6% then.
Well, it's 6%, the whole class has to wear, I mean.
Class has to wear.
Yeah,
Right.
Yes.
regardless.
But what do you do? But you still have optional.
Oh, I see. It should still be optional. You can still optionally quarantine. I don't think you should ever not have the option of
Right.
quarantining.
Are you suggesting, if I'm hearing correctly, exceptions if you've already had COVID?
Yeah,
Or are vaccinated.
or vaccinated. Just like we had here, like you didn't have to quarantine.
No, I
So,
makes sense.
So at the 6%, then it would be the exact same, and the whole class is masking. It would still be just the close contacts. You're not saying the whole class would have to get a test.
no,
Just so close contacts.
yeah. But the whole class would have to mask just because we said it's 6%. We've always said the whole class had to mask.
Any additional comments?
I guess the only other thing that as we're talking about elementary school, same thing too, it's the 15% for the whole grade, when it could be one class. Just the handling of, if one class isn't having anything, we are doing the cohorting. Is 15% not the right number? But I guess I would have a hard time telling a class that it isn't, or has no cases, that whole class would have to quarantine when they're having 0 issues and they are in one class. I guess
Yeah, if we do that at a classroom level versus grade level.
And I completely agree that the number, 15%, it's a low number of kids, but 15% of a whole grade would be, is there a number that's in between, I guess is my question.
So you're asking like, instead of looking at the grade level at the elementary, like almost increasing the number to like pick a number instead of it being a percentage, like a number? Is that what you're asking? Or
The number of students.
because the problem is that what we're seeing is if you have 3 kids and you're 15%, then they 2 days later that kid comes back and they're below 15%.
Correct. I guess I just go back to, it's the same thing, the elementary school still being unique compared to John Long and high school. To know that we have multiple sections in different classrooms. And if we have it isolated to one classroom, but there's other classrooms that just because they happen to be in that same grade, but there's not an issue. Why we would say that whole class.
That whole grade?
That whole grade versus that class.
Did you have that discussion at the elementary level? If there was a reasoning behind
Yes, part of these conversations, I was at a conference, so that's why I keep looking for it, so I apologize. So it isn't that I'm trying to have her answer for me. But conversations that we've had for the last month have been obviously very much a part of, but like, I don't recall the conversation about that. Our concern was the minute number of kids causing it to go virtual. Correct. And then immediately going below that didn't seem to be best for kids, but I don't remember ever coming up with a number at a certain class
But is
that
your
made
concern,
sense,
Steve,
right?
and I get because right now it would be, when we switch it to a grade level only, it becomes virtual if 15%. So if we did have an outbreak in a classroom and there's 8 kids and that actually puts the whole grade into virtual, I admit, like if my kid was in the other 2 classrooms that had 0, my kid's in virtual because there's 8 in that classroom who, you look around and go, but there's none in my kid's classroom at all, but I'm going virtual because there was 8 in another person's classroom.
Because
right. So then maybe the idea would be to give discretion to say, if you get to the point where there's kids that are out of the classroom and because people have quarantined, self-quarantined, or have chosen to quarantine or whatever, the teacher can't effectively teach, because that's why the logic that we did discuss was the 15% at the grade level was at the middle school, it got to the point when you got to 15%, the teachers weren't able to teach because you had a number of kids that were out and you had kids that were quarantining and you had kids that were just ill. Like, I'm out sick today, I'm back tomorrow. Like some of those pieces that were just normal sickness. So that was a piece that we discussed that the teachers brought to Kevin of like, that was the right time to go virtual. Did we need to go for 14 days? No. We learned that because they came back at 0% is what they did. But at that level, it did become a teaching concern.
Which would be different at the elementary, because you don't have that.
Right, but it would be in a classroom, but in a classroom it can easily be that point.
Yeah.
If you have a number of kids out ill.
Versus the grade,
Right, sure,
yeah.
versus the grade, that's correct.
Right.
That is 100% correct.
What was our historical percentage pre-COVID for shutting a class or a building down? 20.
It was 20.
Does that apply
I think
somewhere?
SARS, we think of like, because we were talking earlier about mitigation, we have flu season. If we ever had something that it was so sick that a string of flu swept through the building, that you'd do a deep clean and you'd go virtual.
But that was always at the building level, right? That was never broken down to like at the grade, or that was just 20% at the building level.
That's a good question. I don't know if that, I don't think we ever had to do it, but I think at the middle school, we would have probably done, because of just the grade level, but I could be wrong. I don't recall, I don't know if you guys, Scott or Kevin, if you recall that discussion, the 20% piece. Remember we had the discussion years ago. We never went.
We applied the 20% last year at the 8th grade level when we had 20%.
Oh, with the 8th
Based
grade.
on quarantining,
Yeah.
at that time we were mandatory quarantining, we reached 20%, so we made a determination to go virtual in 8th grade.
Okay.
This year we have not applied the 20%.
But in the past, when we've had flu, we haven't,
It's always
we
been
haven't,
a talk.
we've talked about it.
20% absent rate.
Right.
Due to sickness, then you would go
Which would be,
Yeah.
in that instance, that's at the, like the building, right?
You would shut down a building or a class, because is that the discretion that you could look for?
It wasn't class, it was grade level.
It was-
Grade
it
level
was
or
grade
building.
level.
That's what we're talking about. It was like, was it grade level or, it wasn't class.
Yeah, because I can remember classrooms that we've had before COVID, like the
Right.
stomach flu went through and there was, out of 20 kids, there may have been 7 who were out in a day with.
Right, because they keep coming back, because because with that, you weren't out for 7
You weren't
days, you weren't
out
out for
for
10 days, you weren't
yeah.
out for an extended period of time, you were out until you felt better.
Right.
And some kids maybe were there that shouldn't have been there. Right, and that's why we've gotten rid of perfect attendance, you've gotten rid of some of those pieces that encourage you to come to school or work when you aren't feeling well.
Bless you.
Bless you.
So,
Additional thoughts?
well, I'm wondering, like, with, and more of, this is probably more of a clarification, just kind of going back to when Paul and you and Jeff were having some commentary regarding the exposure versus positive test. Were you saying that to try and determine that on a regular basis would just be, it would be a lot more work than what you're doing? It's not something you're currently doing, like you couldn't just say, oh yeah,
We do have exposure date, we do have like onset of symptom date for our positive students, but it would be a lot.
Okay.
To have to analyze that every day,
Every-
every
okay.
class.
Well, and its
Can there-
impact on a percentage of
I think
students
that's-
that would trip or trigger a mitigation change.
Correct, in and out.
In and out.
Because you lose that binary, you're either here or you're not, and you're not here because you're COVID positive.
Right, can you, like, are you talking about the dashboard and just how that is
Well, not just the
generated?
dashboard, but the administering that. I mean, you're not here because you're COVID positive, and your impact on this mitigation measure actually started on this day versus
Which would be
this day.
tracked in Skyward automatically, right? Internally, we're already
Well, not the
tracking.
back, you're talking about going back, that's
Yeah,
not
right,
tracked.
it's not tracked.
Right.
That, as it is now, it is in Skyward, which makes it a lot more feasible as far
Right.
as tracking versus.
The way it is now,
Yeah.
just
Yes.
looking at the positive.
Versus the,
Because I know there's some discrepancy there and some, and how that can be felt, but.
You have a student that is positive, like that was mentioned earlier, was home, is quarantining because of like a household contact or something else, and they become positive, but they really did not expose any kids in the classroom. I think it's really complex though when you're trying to tease out who was here, who wasn't here.
On a
Who do
regular
we-
basis.
Yeah, who do we include in this percentage, who don't we? And like Jeff said, then it might look like we're trying to hide numbers when we're really not, but
So is there a way just to have that, like, where you have that discretion? Is there a way to do that on those kind of maybe rare instances where it doesn't look like numbers are being fudged, but you can use common sense to say, hey, these kids have not even been in class, so why are we doing some of these mitigation? I mean, is that possible?
Well, anything's possible.
Wouldn't it be
But-
better, though, to do over mitigation than
It's
under?
just- But in that instance, I would say that like the amount of energy and time that we're spending to do that is probably
It's
not
not
the
worth
best
it.
use
Okay.
of district resources.
Sure.
I think shortening our thought was shortening the.
Keeping the kids in school and the effort for that is more effective than
Yes,
that.
and because what you're going to have is you're going to have Stacia talking to Laura, who's going to talk to me, who's going to talk to the school secretary, who's going to talk to the principal, and we're going to, it's going
It's
to
just
take.
gonna be, yeah.
Yeah, shortening to 14 to 5 school days doesn't get you all the way to where you might get to, but it's a reasonable, in my opinion, it's a reasonable middle ground.
That's what we believe. That's what we believe.
Yeah, okay.
And it allows us to look at data again.
It's easier to, yeah, it's easier to track that.
Okay, anything else? In keeping score of the conversation, I seem to hear a general acceptance of the administrative recommendation, except for a possible change in that optional close contact quarantine for 4% COVID positivity rate.
Yes.
Is that
Well,
a reasonable summation?
And a grade level at elementary or no?
Yeah,
Is that the one that you have? That's one.
That would be a second item.
That'd be a second,
Yes.
right? Oh, okay.
So you wanting to vote on that one?
Well, I'd like a motion, and I'm just trying to think exactly how that motion would be. So the option would be to make a motion to approve the administrative recommendation as it's been presented, right? Make a motion to approve the administrative recommendation subject to change X, Y, and Z. And we can vote from there. So, hearing no further discussion on the matter, I would entertain a motion then.
I'm just trying to think of the wording, that's all.
That's fine.
Steve, do you want to do it with your wording?
Well, rather than, are you looking at first, Paul, would we do the changes and then
And then the final,
the
right?
final? I thought that's how we had
changes
done this
first and
before, that
then-
we would.
The motion would just be whatever.
To adopt the administrative recommendation subject
Plus or
to,
minus, subject
yes.
to change.
Okay.
Right, that's how we've done it in the past.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion to adopt the recommendation with the changes of changing that 4% to that you can, instead of the 4%, that you would have to be wearing a mask if you came back, if you're unvaccinated, had not had COVID, and are not vaccinated, that you have to wear a mask.
If you were.
If you're a close contact. And then also 15, I'll just make that as my motion.
15% to be at the class.
15% to be at the class, yeah.
And 15% at the class level?
We're currently at 50.
That's where we're currently at.
At the classroom level.
Well, grade, right?
But still striking the virtual, and, like, I'm okay with changing it to the 5 consecutive days. It's just where it says grade level only for the, I would say at the elementary school, it should be classroom.
Which is the way it is now.
Yeah,
It
well,
is
it's
that way.
both, isn't it? It's classroom and or grade.
Which I think that was the, well, I don't know if you have to finish the motion before we have discussion.
At the elementary.
Okay, keeping it as is then.
With the 5 consecutive.
With the 5 consecutive days.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'm sorry, I got a little
So
confused.
the motion is to accept the administrative recommendation subject to the provision regarding optional close contact quarantining at the 4% COVID positivity rate. That optional close contact would be subject to wearing masks if unvaccinated, right?
Yes. And not unvaccinated, and not having already had COVID.
Not already having COVID. And then the other change would be that you would strike at the grade level only,
In elementary only.
at the elementary.
At elementary,
At
yeah.
elementary. And it would, the 5 consecutive calendar days would remain.
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Just repeat again the 15%. So you're saying, so as it reads right now, at grade level only, so we're saying 15% for the grade level. So, I mean, is there a way to have that? I mean, because in all reality, you could have a classroom that's at 0% that's not even wearing masks. And then the
That
next
would
day
be except at the elementary, correct? Isn't that?
No, that would be except at the elementary. So do we have a number then of what the elementary would be?
Well, it'd just be classroom. It would be the same, but only at classroom, not grade level.
15 at the classroom, that's where we're at today.
Yeah, I think that's 9 on average.
15% at a classroom level depends on how
3.
many kids are in it.
Right.
Right,
I'm
3 to
that's
4.
what I said on
Yeah, which is what we were,
So it's in the current plan is 15% at grade
Right.
level.
right, we were recommending to move away from that. And that's where the 20% discussion came from other people, but, yep.
Currently at elementary, it's classroom and grade, isn't it?
Yes.
So at the elementary, just saying classroom and not grade. Is that?
But I think the concern is because 15% can be triggered so quickly at a classroom at the elementary, but it's still only 5, we went from 14 to 5, I guess. So, I mean, from 14 days down to 5 days. So they would be
Well,
virtual
yeah, do
lessons.
you want to say, I mean, I guess you could say 20% because everybody's masking, I don't know.
Because it's almost certainly, what, 4 kids, most
It's,
likely?
yeah, it's got to be at least
Probably
3,
cover
probably
all.
4.
To hit 15%?
If there's
Yeah.
20 kids, yeah, but 20
4
kids,
For sure, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that does jump quick.
it does.
We could ask.
And I mean, and some classrooms have, I understand that classrooms vary from
But for the most
17 to.
part,
So say-
3 or 4.
3 or 4.
Is probably safe to say.
Yeah, 3 or 4 kids is what's going to trigger that in a classroom.
So is there a way to put the wording in having, I mean, I think there should probably be a grade level percent, and if it stays at 15%, it's fine, but is there a way to put in a administration discretion to what you were saying as far as
Yeah.
when it's truly not the best teachable environment, if it is all in one class? I mean, does that not give you enough clarification?
Or do you say,
Wouldn't it be up to us
Do you
if
say
there's a
grade
way?
level? But
I feel
if-
like that's our. right?
Well, but I'm just trying to know within the grade, that the grade
What
level
if-
is 15.
what if the grade
but to be
is
able to look at the
triggered, but
grades,
one
it's
of the
all in
classrooms,
class.
there's no cases?
But doesn't that?
Can you
just
then
go to
use
classroom?
discretion to say, well, that classroom shouldn't be counted?
Hang on.
Would make it 20 or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you're giving us a hypothetical that we haven't seen, but is potential, I mean, right?
Well, I think, isn't
Out of
like
3
second grade
sections.
facing that right now, where it's gonna be virtual for the grade when one of the classrooms has no cases?
I want to make sure it wasn't one of my team texting me. Yeah, I mean, as we look at that.
I think if there's a way to have some
That's-
sort of.
I mean, that's, obviously, it's possible. I mean, the question would be, so if you had, let's say you had 6 at one classroom, 2 at one classroom, and 0 at another, 6, 2, and 1, would you say it's really just the 6, or would you say it's the, you know, what would be the board's thoughts on that? How would you
I feel like
articulate to certain parents?
Either.
That their class, my class, their, so-and-so's class went virtual, mine didn't. why did mine have to go virtual or vice versa? Right, 'cause if I'm at 60, 10%'s 2, 20%'s, right?
Well, the class
Six,
is-
9, I get to 9. If there's 60, I get to 9 total. So that's actually a pretty good analogy. If I get to 6, 2, and 1, that gets me to 9.
Yeah.
Right.
So that gets me to 15%.
But then you have
So am I
like
sending
one classroom with one
the
classroom.
6? Am I sending the one that has 1, so they get to stay, but the one that had 2 had to go virtual because they had 1 more?
I mean, it.
See, but if we do it
Seems
just
like
at the
a
grade
6.
level, like that 6 is, if you have 6 out of 20 kids have I think you should probably be virtual, to be honest.
Which is why the policy is written.
No?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that what we said? That would already be over the number? That would be over
Well,
the
the
15%?
6 would have triggered that one class. If we just did classroom and not grade.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Then-
But I feel like that's the same thing we said 15 minutes ago, that if it's classroom and it's over, 6 would be
Well,
over.
then they were saying then they would be going virtual at 4 if we did it just at classroom.
Yeah,
So-
I think the discussion should be, is it 15% if it's classroom? Like, if we think that number's too low at potentially 3 or 4, whatever the classes are, should it
Right,
be
right.
20 if it's gonna be classroom
I mean,
versus
I suppose.
15? But in that scenario, that hypothetical scenario, to
6
Carrie's
seems
point,
high.
6 would be over and
Although,
they'd be there, like.
in that number,
They gotta go.
several students have not been in school. That's one of those.
I mean, wasn't that the point you were bringing up before that I would agree with?
Yeah,
I would
that was-
send the whole classroom home if they had 1 kid that had COVID, that,
Right, I
just
wouldn't-
because another class.
Class has it, right, I
6,
wouldn't, that's why I wanted it to be classroom, not grade, but then
But then
is
what
it
does that look
15,
like, right?
you know?
Do you just
But what
look
is
at
3
it
versus 4?
once?
You know what I'm saying, like in a class of 20, 3 versus 4? You know, that's what, I mean, I don't know.
It's a 6,
It's a-
2, and a 1. I mean, it
Well,
seems
6
like-
is more obvious than, I mean, like, you have 3, you can stay. You have 4, you're in virtual, you know, like, but then.
And there is a point where we did have to pick a number to say,
Yeah.
at this point, we are moving to this. That's true from going to 4%. That's true of going to 6%, right? I mean, at some point, you had to add mitigation factors. And so those are the pieces. We chose 15%. Could we say 15%? Yes. Could you move to 20%? You can move to whatever the board would like to have us put into place. And would the 5 consecutive calendar days help? Yes. I mean, I guess it's in theory, if someone were to go virtual, if tomorrow was virtual, then you'd have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. How many people would be, what's the percentage when you'd come back on Monday? I mean, you're gonna have situations like that as we head into various breaks. Whether it's midwinter break, whether it's winter break, whether it's, all the way in February, all those different things. So picking a percentage would help administration be able to utilize that to track data.
Right, and just to be clear, that percentage now is 15%.
That is correct.
And
And the motion on the table keeps it at 15% at the classroom
But I
level.
think, weren't you questioning if that's too low? What?
But at least we went down to
With what
5.
you're looking at there, Jeff, is there,
Instead of 14, so.
can you tell an average of 15%? Is those?
Because
does that
15 and
break down
20
the
is just going to be separated by 1.
Like
It is.
number?
And then some it'll be none, actually.
there-
Because it's like point whatever.
Well, if you get to 9, yeah, if you get to 60, I mean, that's why I said, so if you.
I mean, just in
use
classroom.
As an average.
Like if we said 15 at classroom, or is
That's
it
what we've been
like-
saying, though. That's what we've been saying. So we've
Yeah.
had 7, so we've gone
And
virtual.
that's virtual at 7 on average.
No,
probably
on
a-
average it'd be 4.
4.
Yep,
Oh, 4.
On average, 3 to
Okay.
4.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that seems a bit low, doesn't it?
That's about the average.
I'm okay with 15, actually. 4 kids is 4 kids. I mean, 3 or 4, it doesn't. We went from 14 to, like, really, if you have 3 or 4 kids out of 20 who have COVID,
Well, and
maybe
I
it should be virtual for 5
Well,
days.
I
Or for
I
5
do
calendar
agree,
days, so
but
it
I'm
goes down.
hearing scenarios where like kids have been out, and so if we keep it exactly how it is, right now, that number 6, I believe 3 of them haven't been in school. They've been out because like a parent was sick, and so,
Right, we don't have any classrooms with 6, and I know some parents don't believe that to be accurate, but our data, we have no classes that have 6. That's the issue with, we're looking at our data, and so we
Well, I
have our
thought
data.
you just said 6.
We don't, no, I said.
He was making up.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
I'm talking about hypothetical.
I'm sorry, I thought you were
That's okay.
pulling it right
No,
off
no,
of there.
other people have said that, and I had a conversation with a parent
Oh,
today.
okay.
To say that's not what our data has. Our data is hard data. And so there may be rumors, there may be whatever.
Okay.
This is what we have. I totaled up a classroom that, a grade that had 60, and was trying to think through what do I need to get to
Gotcha, okay.
that would affect that, and how could that play out with the board
So that's
want.
not the case.
And in the
Correct.
end, you're
Okay.
back to your
Yep, that's
comment
right.
earlier.
Okay.
Clarifier.
Our job to develop these plans, in my opinion, is not to prevent people from either testing positive or getting sick,
Right.
but to recognize that there's an ongoing issue, and if we see this issue occurring in a particular classroom, we should be putting in some level of mitigation to stop it as quickly as we possibly can. And I think in this case, 15% to me still feels reasonable with the change to 5 consecutive calendar days.
Yeah, and I'm, my whole point was, I think the discussion should be around, is it 15 or 20, not this other stuff.
Yeah.
15 or 20, the reality is it's one kid, to Karen's point, and I guess I just,
Yeah.
I don't have I'm not anchored to either one of those.
Right.
15 is fine, I mean, I'm fine going to that.
So 15 at the classroom.
Yes.
Yes,
And that was your motion.
which is the effect of the motion.
Perfect.
Okay.
I just want to be clear. It would be both at the classroom and the grade level 15. The only change would be the number of days.
I thought we were just
No.
at the elementary school,
Elementary
would just be
only
classroom.
classroom.
Yeah.
Grade level would be the other buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 612 would be at the grade level only, and elementary would be at the classroom level only.
Okay, so they go virtual, it would just be 5 days, and then they come back, correct? It's
Well, they're
not
below
like
15%. Right.
How do they get below 15% if they're all?
Well, someone's gonna come back. They're not all gonna go virtual at the same time. That's what's happening. Some people are going, a case, they're out for a couple days, someone else goes out, someone else goes out. By the time those kids there's a student ready to come back. it's
Oh, no, I
that
mean
thing.
if the whole class goes virtual.
Because we'll be tracking, if people would still be reporting if they have COVID cases,
Well,
and we'll
there's
know
still
the
a
kids
day
that are
zero.
virtual, we're still tracking those kids because they've had COVID. So they're in our system as to when their date is,
Oh, okay.
either from the test or from the health department that tracks that with us, we track that.
So if they do go virtual as a class, then it really is gonna be about a 12-day, 15-day, before they can go below plus the 5 consecutive days. Right?
I don't believe that's true, because we're not waiting for, you don't go virtual on the first case. So you're getting to that case, so it's all depending on
Okay.
when that.
Yeah.
If
That
those
first
cases
case.
are out, that got you to that 4%, that got you to
Yeah,
that
the
6%.
fourth case was,
Right, whenever that came in, when
5
those other
days.
kids are coming back, then
Oh.
that's what's happening, because they're all,
Yeah.
if you have
So
a
that
usual
one would
situation
drop.
where you have a big party and like 5 kids become ill within 2 days of each other, then I
Oh,
guess,
okay.
then potentially that would be true.
Okay.
There's potential for that.
And under that potential scenario, our plan should kick in sooner
Correct.
and
And then they
provide
still
some
have
level
that.
of mitigating effect relative to that particular case, or
Yeah.
that particular instance.
Correct. Than what it was currently.
Yeah. Okay, so
I'm sorry, I didn't get this right. So if we look at these recommendations, you're saying that instead of it saying at the grade level only, it would say at the classroom level only, at the elementary, instruction becomes virtual until there are 5 consecutive calendar days. And then that second bullet is off. Correct?
Correct. Because you're not at the classroom level, that got erased, but you would keep at the 612 grade level only, instruction becomes virtual until there are 5 consecutive calendar days of a positivity rate below 15%. Because there's a change in the plan. We went from 1 sentence of virtual instruction for the grade building, 14 calendar days, to breaking that up into those pieces, is what I'm hearing the board say.
which is the second modification to.
Yes.
There's a second modification.
Yeah.
The plan, I mean, the first was the
4%.
4% optional close contact quarantine.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
And the motion passes. And I lost my agenda. Okay. Item F, school report cards.
Yep, I have Mr. McMahon and then our principals to sort of walk us through sort of a synopsis of what Ms. Walls had mentioned that we had at our curriculum committee. Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, so I had the distinct pleasure to share with you some really positive news that I shared with the curriculum committee last week, connected to our school report card data. While I didn't bring donuts and fruit and things that we're sharing with our staff tomorrow morning, I do have really good data. And to add to last week's presentation, we found out on Tuesday morning what other schools across the state have. So we added some layers of how we compare across the state. So the state report cards come out annually to report out on 4 priority areas: student achievement, which is measured through ELA and math, and it's measured through our forward test. The forward test is the reason we did not have a report card last year, because of spring of 2020, we did not take the forward test because of the pandemic. ACT Aspire, ACT, and then alternate assessments all go into the measure of achievement, and that's just one priority area. The other priority areas are growth, which is without a doubt a celebration for our district, and I'll be able to show you a couple more things in detail. Connected to ELA and math, our target group outcomes is a new area, but it's really similar to a previous area, and I'll touch on a little bit of that. And then, of course, on-track graduation is the 4th area as a part of the 4 priority areas. Huge, huge celebration. Jeff already shared it in the superintendent report. If you are subscribing to the app, you also saw this. We significantly exceeds expectations for the 3rd consecutive report card. Our score of 84.7 is the 2nd best score we've had over that string of report cards. This ranks us as the 9th best school district K-12 in the state of Wisconsin. That is a maintained ranking. We were 9th 2 years ago as well. We did see some movement around us, but we held still at 9th. So you can see those rankings dating back to 13-14 when we exceeded expectations. We were on a string of 3 consecutive years or report cards of exceeding expectations, then moved to significantly exceeds expectations in the 17-18 school year. We had our highest score in 18-19, 86.5, and we're really expecting great things in the spring of 2020. However, we didn't have that report card, so we can rest on the fact that the 84.7 is indeed our 2nd best score and something that we're very, very proud of. To dig into those 4 priority areas and how they're scored, that has changed over the course of those 6 years, and that's based on achievement and growth based on a percentage. So in a district that is has low socioeconomic status, they are scored in the area of achievement at a higher level. If you are a district that has more socioeconomic status, you're targeting on growth. So we want those students that maybe are in a Title I school to grow more, so your school district is ranked more on growth. As you can see over the last few report cards, we are being measured more on growth than achievement, so it's this balance. However, achievement still continues to be large parts of all 4 priority areas. Growth is also a really high priority area that we're looking to. So to dig in briefly to our points of pride for the school district, you can follow along. It is a colored copy. I know one thing that we learned from last week's presentation is to give you the whole report card so you can see it, so we can reference some of those documents and pages. So I will reference a couple of them tonight. But you can see in the packet on page 1 of 10, this page detailed in front of you in the 4 priority areas of achievement, growth, target group outcomes, and on-track graduation. All are the 4 areas that we're scored on. Without a doubt, our celebration is 94.5 in the area of achievement. We were the same or better than 94.5% of the districts in the state as it relates to achievement. So a huge celebration. And like the last slide said, we're ranked more on growth. So the next bullet point is really important. Because we're ranked more on growth as a total score, our growth score of being higher than 95% of school districts in the state is really a celebration for us. Last week, Rick Seibel, our district assessment coordinator, went really in depth on these 4 priority areas. I'm going to just touch on them and then show you a couple pages within the packet tonight. So the area of achievement, like I referenced, is connected to reading, it's connected to math, and then you can see both on the bottom, it reports out on English language arts and math, so you're seeing both of those scores, and you can see that we're pretty close in both as it relates to achievement as a 6-12 system, or I'm sorry, a 3-12 system in ELA and math. I want to spend a little bit of extra time talking about growth, and I'd ask you to turn to page 5 of your packet. And it has a rating scales of student value added groups. And this is without a doubt one thing that Rick and I have talked a lot about. That's something we're very, very proud of as a district. And that's connected to all of the subgroups. And you can see the blue ratings of 3.0 and higher being something that we would contribute to. If you are a student in a district, being above 3 says that the district itself's adding value to you as a student in our district. And in every single category ranked on this report card, Grafton has ranked above that 3.0 in ELA and math. I'd ask you to look at the bottom score in both English, language arts, and math. It is students that were not proficient on last year's report card or the previous report. All of those students have shown growth as measured as a whole in the district report card. Same thing for the area of math, even further above that 3.0 average, really saying that being in Grafton helps our students to become better and grow year after year. So that is without a doubt the celebration that Rick and our team has talked about, and our principals will come share a little bit about that in a little bit. Next is target group outcomes. This is a slight change from the previous report card. What they're looking at is the lowest 25% of students within a group, and are those students growing? As a celebration for our district, without a doubt, our students are growing. You can see in that small bar graph, our district ranks higher than 93.9% of districts in the state as it relates to target growth. Our last area is on-track graduation. You probably wonder, what does that mean to an elementary student or teacher? Well, 3rd grade reading. We've talked a lot about that. That is why it's on our dashboard. If students are reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they're on track to graduate, and that is definitely an indicator on our report card. One thing that you heard us talk about last week as a focus for our elementary group is reading, and that is connected to that 3rd grade reading score. In middle school, it's connected to 8th grade math, and that's a huge priority area within the on-track graduation. Of course, graduation rate as a high schooler is also impacted in this and directly correlates to this score. And then attendance is a huge thing we talked about a lot last year during the pandemic. Were our students in school? Were they here? That's the other layer that goes into on-track graduation. I'm going to call up our principals to celebrate with you. Again, they're not bringing donuts, fruit, but they will certainly eat that tomorrow morning, I'm sure. So we'll start with the high school, and Mr. Manta.
Good evening, everyone. Very pleased to be in front of you tonight and talk to you a little bit about Grafton High School and our progress on the state report card. As you can see, we have significantly exceeded expectations. It's our 2nd straight report card that we've been ranked in this particular category. As a part of that, as far as going through the rankings, looking at Grafton High School as ranked 13th out of 352 high schools in the state of Wisconsin. Very proud of that work that has went in with our staff, with our students, and the progress we've made over the course of the last 6+ years. When you look at our points of pride, all 4 of our priority areas scored in the 93rd percentile or above, so I wanted to mention that specifically. However, our point of pride that is listed is the area of growth. Michael did a great job explaining that in terms of what that means, but we scored the same or higher than 94.2% of schools in the state of Wisconsin, and we also at Grafton High School exceeded the average growth for every single category area that is listed on the report card when it comes to ELA and math. So very proud of our staff, and just a big congratulations for all the hard work our students put in as well. So thank you.
John Long Middle School, we scored 81.7. Michael kind of has put up the last 6 report cards. Same for John Long. This is our 2nd highest score in those past 6 report cards that have come out. We currently rank 29th out of 226 6-8 schools in the state. That's not the same number as the high school. You're probably wondering where the variation comes, because some middle schools are 7-8, some are 5-8. So this is comparing all 6-8 schools, and we're very proud of reaching the 29th. Our point of pride comes in the area of on-track graduation. We look at chronic absenteeism, your school-wide attendance, and then as Michael reported out before, our 8th grade math achievement. And for us in that proficiency, we ranked 18.6 points higher than the state average. So that is a very great achievement for us, and it continues to help us grow as we continue to keep pushing forward. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for having me this evening. For Kennedy Elementary School, we earned a score overall of 81.7, which is our highest score over the course of the past 4 years since we've been consolidated in the new elementary school. Out of that ranking, with 78th out of the state, out of 384 4K through 5th grade schools, and that puts us approximately the top 21% of elementary schools in the state. For a point of pride, we're very proud of our achievement. Our score was the same or higher than 92.4% of the schools in the state of Wisconsin, and that's a huge point of pride with the achievement. But we know that growth and everything is important as well. Many things go into a great report card. I'm also here representing Woodview Elementary School in Ms. Schwensen's absence. Hello. Woodview should be very proud of their report card with their overall score of 85.7, significantly exceeds expectations. They did an outstanding job, and it ranks 42nd out of the 384 schools, which puts them into approximately the 10th or 11% of all elementary schools for K through 5th grade. For their point of pride, Woodview has an achievement score that's the same or higher than 90.9% of the schools in the state as well. And we're excited about our progress and our scores, but then also we have a lot to work on as well, and we're motivated to continue improving. Back to you, Mr. McMahon.
Thank you. So last week we didn't give you the whole report, so maybe you've got more questions this week. Questions?
Any questions?
No? Well, feel free to reach out. Rick and I have talked a lot about this, and if you have questions around the data, certainly feel free to reach out, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, there certainly is a lot to digest and to take in. But I think I have to agree with the points of celebration that were raised, as well as the general high level of quality that this report speaks to relative to the district. And it speaks volumes to commitment, right? I mean, commitment to our kids, but our kids to our curriculum, and our administrators to ensuring that we have the right curriculum, rigorous curriculum, that we're focused on the challenges that we see them and areas that we referenced as improvement, and still points of pride relative to other data points in the state, but a desire to continually improve and get better in those. I mean, so to me, there are a lot of points of pride. But there's tremendous amount of commitment from the top down and from the bottom up to making this district one of the best in the state. And I appreciate that from the administrative level, from Superintendent Nelson down to the administrative team, but then to the kids and to the parents and their commitment to academic excellence as well. So thank you very much.
And I know you think this as well, but I would also recognize our teachers, like the work that they've done. I know
absolutely, yes.
You've listed a lot of really good things here, which I appreciate, and I know you believe that also, which is why we're celebrating with them tomorrow. And it's not only our teachers, but our support staff. It's really, we celebrate everyone, our custodians. It's everyone working together for our kids, making it a safe and welcoming space, right? We talk about graduation, and there's a lot of data that talks about building relationships with an adult in your building. And it is all of our staff, whether it's as you enter the building and seeing our support staff greeting people, or in the lunchroom and our lunch people helping us with serve lunch to kids and saying hello to them, is really, we have a great group of people working in our district that we're very proud of, and it takes everyone working together to have success that we're having.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
And you're staying.
Item G,
You're
Grafton
staying.
High School course
I
offering.
think Mr. Mantai's joining you, or maybe he's not. Yeah, that's right. I think it's the two of you again.
Yeah, so last week
Another thing we talked
we
about.
were teachers present about the changes and possible, really it comes down to not necessarily new courses, but really course name changes, and specifically in the area of communication arts, mathematics, and the fine arts. And so I'll tag team with Scott. He has agreed to take on the I guess, the lion's share by doing communication arts.
So over the last number of years, we've usually come to you with a lot of new course offerings and new programs. So at this point, we're in a pretty good spot in terms of our offerings overall. So what you're going to see tonight, as we just presented the curriculum committee, are just some very basic changes. So within communication arts, and Mr. Durst was present at the curriculum meeting to go through this, we're just recommending a couple of name changes. Publication design and production that's the new name from professional writing. And then publication design and production 2, instead of writing for publication, just more accurately indicates what the course is actually about and provides levels to it, level 1 and level 2. Technical writing and communication is the new name from technical composition and communication. And there was discussion at the curriculum meeting just about composition versus writing and the more technical style of that writing. Moving on, college composition will be the new name from essentials of college writing. So more along the lines of, once again, composition versus writing. And then the course removal is foundations of college writing. So college composition will be the college writing course, and then the technical writing and communication will be the other writing course that is involved. So the elimination of foundations of college writing. And then a couple quick prerequisite changes. Literature as a social reflection and contemporary literature will now require the following prerequisites. Lit as a social reflection will require AP Lang or World Lit Comp, and contemporary literature will require world literature and composition. And obviously Brian was a little bit more articulate and detailed at the curriculum meeting, and I'm here on his behalf just reporting those changes to the board. Thank you.
Say similarly, Kellen Wesson did an excellent job of showcasing a story that really impacted her decision to go back and be able to teach function statistics and trigonometry as an MATC credit. She did a really nice job of, it started with a student, which I thought was really inspiring and cool, and also connected to great data that as a MATC transcribed credit, we are a high school that's offering more of those opportunities than any other high school in Ozaukee County. This would be our 6th course, if approved tonight, that we would be able to offer to students as FST and get credit for MATC. The other name change would be in the area of fine arts. In the area of band, we would be looking to change symphonic band to wind ensemble. And in the area of art explorations, not a change to the name, but simply a change as it being a prerequisite to other courses. We would be looking at as it no longer needing to be that prereq for drawing, painting, ceramics, arts, photography, and graphic design, however, still requiring sophomore status for the area of photography and graphic design. We'd look for a recommendation to approve these name changes, as well as retroactively going back to allow this year's FST students to receive credit for this year.
Any questions for Michael? It's my understanding that the curriculum committee is recommending these for...
We're recommending it for board approval.
So do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Housing Department will get right on the changes.
Item H, second reading and approval of new Neola policies. Policy 5500.01 and policy 6152.01. Steve, you want to take these? We've had a first read. This is our second read this evening. There's no changes from the first read.
We've had no one reach out with questions or suggestions to change it, but.
Yep, nope, no further recommendations for changing this from the policy committee. They were approved in the October meeting for the first read, and this is just the final second read.
All right, then entertain a motion to approve policy 5500.01, conduct in virtual classroom, and policy 6152.01, waiver of school fees or fines, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And those two policies are approved. Item I, debt refinancing.
So our next two pieces are things that Mr. Kaler talked about from the Finance Committee. And so Topher is going to walk us through our last two items.
Yes, so we are very excited. The administration is excited to bring a recommendation, both from administration and the Finance Committee, to do a debt refinancing of our referendum debt. Basically, it restructures the debt so that the debt payments occur in every other fiscal year. Because of that restructuring, that increases the amount of state aid we get over time, which decreases the levy. So our principal and interest payments are basically paid for through a levy into Fund 39, and then any effect on our state aid impacts our Fund 10 levy. So by structuring this to have no payments in a given year, we're not being impacted by negative aid on state aid the following year. That's an increase in our state aid. Then the following year, when we basically are essentially doubling up our payments into that next fiscal year, we're limited on how much state aid we can lose by the 15% hold harmless. Thus, all those debt payments, there's just a portion of those debt payments where we're losing aid on in that following year. In short, with this restructuring, we would, over the course of the life of the current schedule, reduce the levy by right around $20 million, from $71 million to $51 million. Here on the chart, you can see the current structure of our referendum debt in blue. Refinancing it puts it on a different trajectory in the using that red line. So anything above the red line, we would not need to levy for going forward. And again, that would result in a saving to taxpayers of right around $20 million between now and 2039. It would also retire the debt 4 years early. The last debt payment would be made in 2034 rather than 2038. So with that, we're looking for the board to approve moving forward with this restructuring of the refinancing of the debt concept, knowing that we still have some work to do. The week after Thanksgiving, we would have a rating call, due diligence call, and then on Monday, December 13th, Baird would bring essentially the winning bid for those bonds for approval at a special board meeting. So we'd look forward to having recommendation from the board tonight to move forward.
Again, significant conversation with Representative Baird at our Finance Committee meeting, and the Finance Committee is recommending this for approval, so I would entertain a motion to approve the refinancing mechanism as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just to clarify, Topher, the interest savings for refinancing is 1.8 million?
From the technical standpoint, yes. So there's...
I know you gave the total.
Right, and so there's some savings there because it's being paid off more quickly. Obviously, the lion's share of the savings comes from the increasing our state aid, which then reduces our Fund 10 tax levy.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed? And it passes. Item J, approval of the district depository.
Yes, the district has been offered a donation of stock to go toward our Enhancing the Future project. We do need, in order to accept that donation, have the stock liquidated and then the funds transferred to our account, do need to open or basically have the board approve Edward Jones as a depository in order to make that transaction happen. So we worked with our auditor to make sure we were putting together what we needed to pass muster, if you will. And what they were looking for is for the board to approve Edward Jones as a depository so that we can make this transaction happen. And then essentially put those funds towards the Enhancing Our Future project.
Motion to approve the recommendation regarding approving Edward Jones as district depository.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Is this a one-time use or good till cancel, or?
It would be good till it's canceled, but at this point, most likely, it would be only used in this instance.
Any fees?
There'd be a fee for the transaction. I believe it's something in the neighborhood of $350 off of a $25,000 donation.
Okay. All right, any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion passes. All right, then I guess one last comment that I'll make, and I'll echo what Mr. Nash said at the beginning of the meeting. It is remarkable, despite the circumstances and COVID and all the rest over the last couple of years, to have such a strong mix of academic excellence and student achievement and accomplishment on the field, on the court, in the pool, wherever it happened to be. And I think it speaks further of Superintendent Nelson's comments relative to staff of all kinds, including our coaches and the experiences that they afford and bring for our kids. So a good night for celebration and a good cause for celebration. So with that, I'd look to have the Board of Education convene into closed session to consider strategies for crime detection or prevention. This is in accordance with Wisconsin State Statutes 1985, 1 sub D. Do I have a motion to move into closed?
So moved.
Second.
Take a roll call vote.
Yes.
Sean, how do you vote?
Yes.
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 And yes, we are closed.